This is Ace Coach.
Welcome to the show, Ian. It's an absolute pleasure having you on today.
Thank you.
And today we're going to be featuring you and learning more about your practice. And I always like to kick off by asking my guests to, how would you introduce yourself to your clients? Would really love to know that.
That's actually a really interesting question. If I'm in a casual situation, I might just simply say that I'm a glorified storyteller. But if I'm in a professional gathering, it's very different. I say that I help professionals turn clarity into contribution and contribution into currency without betraying their soul. It's a bit of a mouthful. But people come to me when they're standing at a threshold, or a crossroad. They've outgrown the old way, the hustle, the compromise, the fragmentation, but they don't necessarily see the new way. So what I bring is a map that makes sense of their past, a pathway that honours their purpose, and leading them to a much brighter future. I definitely do not sell quick wins. I guide deep returns to integrity, identity, to impact. Whether someone is a policy leader or a trauma-informed coach, a recovering academic, or a spiritually rooted entrepreneur, they find in me not a fix, but a mirror. One that definitely says your inner knowing is not the problem. It's the compass. I understand their journey. I'm here to guide them through it.
That is such that's really a powerful way to introduce yourself, as in to your potential clients. To dive deeper into that, I'm curious, when you say clarity to contribution, do you mean as in them contributing something to society, or what does that mean?
That's their way of, instead of them having something to sell, it's more of what do they have to give? What do they have to contribute? I don't look at things from making a buck. It's more about what gift do they have to share.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I'm always curious, how did you get into coaching? What inspired that venture?
Well, it really stopped when I stopped pretending that I was only a strategist or a scholar. I spent years building global messaging systems and managing huge contracts and teaching project managers and saving multi-million-dollar rollouts. Even as I was reconstructing these huge messaging networks around the world, I was guiding people through transformations in boardrooms and training rooms, and even over a cup of coffee. So what inspired me to coach formally was watching how many knowledgeable, competent people were spiritually starving. They were emotionally isolated, and it gets really lonely at the top. I'm sure you've heard the cliche, but it's so true. Their nervous systems were absolutely fried. Their identities were split. They were surviving and they weren't striving. And I realised that I could hold space, not just for systems, but also for souls.
Mm,
This is my lived experience with trauma. And recovery wasn't a liability, it was a gift.
mm,
That's when coaching stopped being something I did and I started being who I am. And it was that transition where if you said I was coaching, I'd shudder at the word thinking that's beneath me,
mm,
um, and realized that coaching was like walking down the road with somebody and making sure that you just gave them a little bit of a nudge to keep them on the road so they didn't fall off the sidewalk.
mm,
Um, it, yeah,
mm.
I hope that makes
I,
sense to everybody.
it does. It does. I love that description. It's kind of like guiding them, so that they don't fall off. So I really love that way you put it. And I'm also always curious, like, what is your coaching style? Like, I see you've got this soft, vibe about you, but what have you got, like a trademark or a process that you use to work with your
Oh,
clients? Yeah.
definitely,
Okay.
definitely. I've got a particular philosophy that I
Okay.
bring to the table. Um, and I suppose the easiest way that I can frame it is, and I'm going to speak directly to your audience now, you don't need fixing, you need
Mm,
remembering.
mm,
My style really is a fusion of systems thinking, my background, and nervous system anchoring.
mm,
Now, this is a new term that most people may not be familiar with, but it's really at a soul level. It's discernment. It's getting in touch with who you really are and have been, but not that you've may not have actually have seen in yourself. I'm a historian and a philosopher, and I bring that sense of pattern. And as a strategist, I bring that sense of clarity. And as a healer, I bring that presence of
mm,
safety into the mix. There's three legs to the stool. You know, my clients, interesting enough, describe me as a forensic, surgical, but gentle soul.
mm,
I quite like that because I cut right to the chase.
mm,
I see that invisible architecture that these coaches struggle with. Their
mm,
inherited beliefs, their systemic pressures and survival
mm,
patterns. We lovingly dismantle what no longer serves. I blend counterfactual reasoning from historiographical background with polyvagrants, informed embodiment work. Please excuse the big words. That's my academic background, but they summarize huge theoretical backgrounds that inform what I do. My coaching is not just mindset. It's thematic, it's
mm,
strategic, it's spiritual. It's for people who want to lead from truth, not tension. So, it might be considered a little bit radical in a way, but it's really for the people who are drawn to me.
mm,
And I call them edge dwellers. Some people feel like they're about to fall off the cliff, and I go, no, you're in exactly the right spot because these leaders don't feel they quite fit the mold.
yeah.
They think differently and they feel deeply. They often carry invisible burdens. They might be decolonizing their field. bridging spiritual insight with practical action, or recovering from burnout while still holding leadership roles. It's those edge dwellers. That's where I can really come to the fore and assist. I'm really drawn to them because I'm one of them.
Mm,
I know what it's like to be brilliant but
mm,
misread. To be sensitive but strategic.
mm.
To be spiritual but sometimes being judged for being unrealistic by those who are not at the fore of their field. I see as these people because I see them in their contradiction, in their courage, in that quiet craving to be whole. They're
Mm.
not here to play safe, and I'll tell you that, Savi. They are not here to play safe. They are
Mm.
here to bridge vision and form. And this is where I help them to do it without them collapsing or compromising.
Mm.
Sorry, I've been
Very.
talking for a while, but you've got me on my hobby horse. Right?
I love it. I love it. I like. I could see the your passion coming through,
Oh,
and
very,
I'm always,
very much
yeah,
so.
yeah. And I do like to really get clear on the who exactly you work with. Like, do you work with like CEOs, founders, or do you work with like C-suite executive, or what does that look like for you?
Again, it could even go down to middle management.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but I'm normally looking at, yeah, I'm going to use that dirty word, coaches. Okay. Now, a coach doesn't necessarily have to be called a coach. They could be the team mentor
Oh,
um, in a business
ah,
group.
I see.
They could be a spiritual healer who
Mm,
has their own business. Um,
mm,
there's such a wide gamut of people who actually, and what it really comes down to is they can relate to me as I can relate to them.
damn,
Um,
mm,
I don't expect um, hippies. Um, I don't expect the one percenters, but I could be looking after the the family business manager of a one
mm,
percenter.
I see.
Or it could be the pilot of their executive jet.
Mm,
Um, I I get a gambit of people who once they're in the room, and that's all by Zoom nowadays. But once they're in the room, they come from such a wide field. Again, they're at that crossroad. They know that what's been is no longer working for them, and they're looking for authenticity, integrity. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how clinically I answered your question, but um,
yeah,
I did my best.
you did because of I was thinking and one thing I'm learning about executive coaches is that they don't necessarily just work one on one. Sometimes they work with like a team or they work with like a staff
Very much
or
so.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so I hold very small cohorts. Um,
Okay.
I only want 25 people in the room at any one
At the
time
time. Yeah,
um,
okay.
because I can manage that.
Yeah.
I can speak to everybody in the room when there's only,
Mm,
a couple of dozen people.
mm,
And if I get more than 25, I hive them off to another group.
I see.
Because I'm working globally,
Mm.
I sometimes have to get people in different time zones.
Sounds, yeah.
What serves people in Europe, which is I normally do that class at 6 p.m. my time, which is 9 a.m. their time. If
Mm.
I'm working with people across the east coast of America, it'll be 4 p.m. their time, it'll be 6 a.m. my
Your
time.
time. Mm.
So it's interesting working in such a global environment nowadays. So normally, if it's a CEO managing a team of executives or something similar to that, they will come into the room. They will get themselves clear on what needs to happen, and then it's up to them if they want to share some of that insight with other executives, or whether they in fact suggest to other executives to join one of my other groups.
I see.
So, yeah,
I see.
I hope that
Makes
answered
sense.
your question.
Yeah, it does. It
Good.
does. It makes sense. Awesome. All right, then let's talk about some wins you've had. What's one win you've had with your clients that you are very proud of?
Um, I've got two wins that I can think of, and I'm hoping that we've got time that I can briefly share both of them with you, because it's hard to split hairs and say one was better than the other. I remember working with a client, and after a long time, that had a very successful career in public service, but they were exhausted, and
Mm.
I could see that they were unseen. Again, this is a different take on things. You know, being in the public eye but unseen. Secretly wondering if their best years were behind them. Um,
Mm.
they they didn't need motivation. They didn't need, what they actually needed was permission to shift, to speak, to stop performing, and start living. So over a few months, we calibrated everything, from their identity, their boundaries, even their pricing, and most importantly, their presence.
Mm.
They ended up rewriting their professional narrative, and launched a new consultancy aligned with their deeper values.
Mm.
Now they serve international clients in trauma informed governance, mainly in South Africa. Now,
Mm.
this is a kind of transformation that I aim for in every client, and it's a testament to the effectiveness of my coaching. And I'm not trying to blow my trumpet here, but it was profound. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a journey of transformation, and it's a testament of the power of coaching. But
Mm.
but the real win, they stopped apologising for their insight, and that was
Mm.
lovely. They finally felt safe, not just to succeed, but to be seen. This
Mm.
transformation, this reclaiming of their power,
Mm.
is what I strive for in every client. It really is a journey of personal growth and empowerment. And again, it's a testament to the power of coaching. Do we have time for me to share a second example?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause yeah.
Okay, I'll try and be a bit quicker on this one. I had a organisational psychologist come to me from America, and he had just written this amazing, I'll call it a coaching program, but it was
Mm.
really for high end executives. And he said to me that he was trying to license it. He'd never run the program, he'd never delivered the training course to anybody, but he was trying to license it, and people kept asking him, why do you think it's the bee's knees? Why do you think it's worth the money you want to charge for it? And he didn't have an answer. And it dawned on me that for the answer to any question, the answer to any question is actually in the question. And he hadn't articulated what the question was. And so it took me about 30 to 40 seconds, and it dawned on me that he needed a way to prove to people that his program was either as good as he thought it was or it wasn't. And so I said, look, why don't you offer the course to a dozen people from different companies and monitor them for 3 months after the course? And he said, how am I going to monitor them? And I said, well, let's use a 5-pillar strategy to measure their productivity, but all these different elements of them by. And so we ran that for 3 months, and then we came back with the results. And the fear that he had to conquer was that his program could have been rubbish, or it could be the bee's knees. And we actually discerned that it surpassed everything that he thought that it could. We went.
Wow.
He then took those results back to the people that he wanted to license the program to, in Asia, across the Americas. I don't always think of America as the whole
Latin
continent.
America.
Yeah, there's Canada, there's America, and there's Mexico, and then there's South America. Geopolitically, everything's changed so much in the last couple of months. Yeah, whatever. And he was able to start selling licenses, and it just solved the problem by answering the question that he hadn't been able to articulate. And that was a joy for me to be able to go, hey, look, just thinking outside the box, how about trying this? So it doesn't take a lot, but when you're inside the problem, it's very hard to, I think the cliche is it's hard to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. Shoelaces. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Sometimes you just need to somebody else's, like a third party's opinion on something that would see something that you're not seeing when you're, like you said, when you're in the problem. So yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Now, that was multi-million-dollar deals that he made because of that simple answer.
That's crazy.
I should have got royalties for that.
For that, that is crazy.
That's not what I'm about. What I'm about is just watching that spark turn into a flame. It's beautiful to watch.
So cool. I can imagine. All right, then we've talked about some previous clients, and you talked about some really good wins you've had. I'm always curious as well, like when it comes to finding these kind of guys to work with, what would you say is your biggest challenge?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Biggest challenge. Just give me a second to think about that. I'll come up with an answer.
No worries.
The biggest challenge. Well, I know what I've identified my clients, my niche. Okay, that they're often deeply discerning, Okay, that
Mm.
that false promises have burned them in the past. They've had shallow programs, but they value depth. But they don't always believe it's available to them in the marketplace.
Mm.
So the challenge really is resonance. So
Mm.
how do I show up in a way that doesn't just market a service but invokes recognition in them? Well, I suppose that's why I've created a bridge the vision, which is a 5-day identity recode. It's more than a workbook. It's based on my lived experience, and this is
Mm.
something that I'm offering as a freebie for your clients.
Okay.
It lets them see how I support the nervous system in the narrative. And I suppose once they see that, they know that this is it. Okay. This is the thing that they've been searching for. Yeah, I'm not out there to necessarily market and sell myself
Mm.
because that's not what works for me. You know,
Okay.
it's moving the needle. You know, it's yeah, for those of out there who see themselves as coaches or mentors or they're looking for embodiment. It's not just a strategy that they're looking for or a funnel. You know, for me, it was when I stopped hiding. Now, you know, I used to underprice and over explain, and I would shrink my language. You know, I thought of spiritual depth and material wealth just couldn't coexist. But here's where it really changed me. Once I regulated my nervous system, I claimed my story and I started to price from purpose and everything shifted.
Mm. Okay.
Now I walk what I teach. And I hope this doesn't sound glib because it's not. I launch from overflow. You know, I speak without apology.
Mm.
That's coherence.
Mm.
That's what magnetizes clients to me. It's not polish. You know, I'm sure I've made a few faux pas today, but it's about presence. They will relate to my nature and who I am, or they won't.
Mm.
And if they do, fantastic. If they don't, well, then maybe they might relate to somebody else that can help them. But this is the essence of my coaching philosophy. It's what I believe leads to true success. You know, that they need to build from integrity, not urgency. I did that for years and it just didn't work.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Very interesting. And I'm guessing as we wrap up here with this, I always like to leave our audience with a final tip from you. What's one thing that you'd share to a coach early on their journey, maybe just starting out?
Oh,
What's something that you share to them that would be like that would actually make a massive difference in their business?
you know, the interesting thing with being an old hand at this is trying to remember what it was like back in the beginning.
Mm.
And I've had to do a bit of naval steering to actually see what happened
Mm.
and how did things change. And so here's my 2 cents worth on it. And this, of course, is trying to recall what it was like, you know, 30, nearly 40 years ago. I'm getting a bit long in the tooth. Oh, no, yeah, whatever. Before you brand, before you even think of scaling your business, you
Mm,
really need to ask yourself, have I lived this?
mm,
Whatever you're going to teach or brand yourself, have I lived this? Do I embody this? Your coaching is only as potent as your presence.
mm,
Now, if you're trying to market wears and tears that you've not experienced, you're not going to work. You know,
mm.
if you're dysregulated and over identifying with your clients or chasing validation, just slow down. I'm reminded of an American poet, Walt Whitman, who said, I loaf and I invite my soul. I lean and I loaf.
Mm.
My ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Now, how foreign is that thought, for so many, that we might actually make progress by loafing? Now, some of my philosophies that have worked profoundly for me and most of my client base, embodies these topsy-turvy thoughts.
Mm.
How does your nervous system work? Get mentored by someone who sees you fully, not just what you want to show them, but they see the whole bloody picture. Excuse the French. You know, someone who can teach you how to price with honesty and not hesitation. You don't
Mm.
just slap a price tag on what you're worth. You've got to actually price from, your heart and from your gut. You've got to trust that your alignment outperforms the algorithms. Oh, I like that. I might write that one down. That alignment outperforms the algorithms.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I hope that answers your question, Avi.
It does. It does. This has been an awesome chat, Ian. I've learned so much about you, your philosophy. You shared some
Thank you.
really big wins that are, really impressive. And as we wrap up here, how can our viewers go learn more about you? What's the best way for them to do that and possibly work with you?
Right. I'm currently working with a marketing techie chap in Glasgow. I love working on the international stage. I'm down here an hour west of Sydney in Australia, so I'm down
Yeah.
under. And Avi, you're in London, so yeah, it's great. But we're putting together a freebie, which should be ready hopefully by next week. So if anybody's interested, just shoot me an email. My email is Ian Tasker at knowledgefactors.com.au.
Mm.
If you don't get that, just flick Avi an email. He'll pass on my details, get back to me, and I'll send you a free copy of my handbook, which will give you a sense of, a very top level sense of my course. The actual course that I will be launching next week is 12 modules run over 12 weeks. Again,
Mm.
cohorts of around 25. It's called The Bridge to Vision.
Mm.
And would love to see you inside that program. Sorry it wasn't ready tonight, but it will come together before next week, so before the end of the month.
Love it, love it. And yeah, we're gonna include all of that in the show notes and in the description as well, so for anybody that wants to check it out. So by the time this goes live, hopefully it should be ready by then. So yeah,
Excellent.
once again, Ian, yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak not only with you, but for your global audience. I hope that there's been something in there for some of you.